The most important people in the world, with Charles Berman and Jonathan Berman. Featuring interviews with people with interesting viewpoints, which, if true, could make them the most important people in the world. Let's meet one of them now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Most Important People in the World podcast. This is Charles Berman.
I'm Jonathan Berman.
And we're very pleased to have with us today Tony. And Tony, if I'm correct, you've asked us not to give any further name than just Tony. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. My name is Tony. I live in the Binghamton area, and I have a YouTube channel called Caveman444. That's Caveman numbers 444.
Okay, now, Tony, I'll give to our audience a little bit of a preview of what's up, because you actually approached us about going on the program about a theory about the shape of the Earth that people might not be familiar with.
Yeah, and I hope your listeners are ready to maybe flex their imagination muscles a little bit, because we've been locked into a lot of theories over the years that we can't escape now due to the size of scientism, and the establishment of scientism. We've been locked into ways of thinking. So I hope your viewers are a little limber when it comes to thinking about things that go against the mainstream cosmology that we've been fed since we've been in kindergarten, and we walked into that classroom and we saw the globe on the table.
Listeners, I demand that you immediately open your minds to anything you might hear and don't think critically about it in the way that you've been taught in science classes. We are now going to delve into new realms of understanding about Earth's topology. Yeah,
we're going to ask you to just basically believe anything you might hear coming up forward, even things that contradict each other. Now, Tony, I get the impression you're, based on what you're saying, you're sort of familiar with the fact that I think that statistically most people think the Earth is ball-shaped.
Yeah. For anyone wondering, I did not time travel here from 500 years ago. Okay, I grew up with the same schooling, the same lessons, the same science classes that everyone else went through. I describe myself as ex-NASA fanboy who was really into NASA and kind of got disappointed by them.
That's just because NASA sort of operates on the assumption, too, that the Earth is round.
Yes. Some would say they operate on that assumption, and some would say that they only exist to perpetuate that assumption.
Oh.
Now, for listeners who are not aware, NASA stands for National Aeronautic and Space Administration.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and which means that you have to check in with them whenever you go above a certain height. So anyone on Earth needs to check in with these guys who run the show above a certain altitude. So
okay, so let's.
So when it comes to space travel, they are the agency you must pass through.
So let's step back just a bit, because I'm curious. Sort of a twofold question. A, why? How did you come to the conclusion? How did you find out that the Earth is flat? And why do you think most people think the other? Why do most people get the impression it's round when it's really flat?
Well, I came to it. I'm not even saying that it is flat. I'm not even saying that I have discovered a truth. I think of myself as always learning and always waking up. So what I know for myself in my heart, I know that I'm not on a sphere, okay? And that just comes through my journey and what I've been through. What I've seen, I think a lot of people have to believe it's a globe, because what other choice do they have? They walk into kindergarten and there's a globe on the table. They have no other way to discern for themselves how to legitimize this globe. Okay, you're too small to ask those questions, and whatever you're told, the teacher says it's a globe, you're a globe. But if you're like me, when you walked into that classroom, your eyes trailed around the surface and under, and you thought to yourself how Australians could be stuck to the bottom of that thing, right?
Right, because they might. If it was a circle, they would fall off.
Right. We know no better, so we just have to take it we have to take their word for it. And, when we're little, we see our authority figures, and our authority figures give us our answers. And when we get a little older, our authority figures become, judges and policemen and, astrophysicists. They become the authority. And, when you realize that the authority of your parents was actually a made-up authority to get you to, act in line and have a good life, they needed to discipline you, but it was a perceived authority by you. When you get older, you just latch on to another perceived authority, and there's always going to be an authority there to meet you. Having discernment means that you realize that you have the power to call BS on whoever you want. Don't ever forget that. You can look anyone in the eyes and discern for yourself if they're being truthful, not in their information, but how are they coming across? How are they treating others who are giving them opposition?
So NASA's this arbitrary authority. They're just saying things. And people should, they can hear NASA and they hear you, and they just sort of, how do they know who to believe, you or NASA?
Well, I would say don't believe either. I say just do your own research. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when you do research on NASA, you get just disappointed. You just get very disappointed. The geeks out there looking for the telemetry tapes from when they went to the moon and back are very disappointed when they find out that they've been overwritten. The tapes have been written over. The biggest achievement in mankind, this is not the '89 Super Bowl, okay? This is the greatest achievement in mankind. And these are the numbers that prove that these spaceships, these crafts actually traverse these seats, are recorded in the telemetry tapes where all the data is stored. And that's the proof. That's the hard computer science proof, and it's not there. And you go to pictures. You start to go to pictures. My heart dropped when I typed in Earth from space into Google, and I come from a media background, and I looked at those photos and I said, "Oh my God, these are paintings. These are digital paintings made to look very eye-pleasing." And the photo, the texture artists at NASA, NASA does employ photo people. We have a couple detectors now in the Flat Earth movement who talk about that, how they are basically instructed to make textures of foreign worlds and such. But when you dig a little deeper, you realize there are only two full photographs of the Earth. There's only been two. One came to us in '72, and that was their last flight back to Earth, their last moon mission. Was in '72. They snapped a photo right before they went home. You'd think you'd be snapping photos every 2 seconds on the moon, but no, they snapped one photo right before they came home in '72, and now the second full photograph came to us in 2015. And Obama tweeted it. Oh, look at this! This is the second full image of the Earth in what is it, 5 decades now? I mean, we are taxpayers, okay, and all we have are 2 photos of the complete Earth. It starts to get disturbing. It starts to play on your mind, So these are the kind of things I look into.
Yeah, it's a pretty low number. I want to. One thing you made me curious about. You said about doing our own research, and you were using this word scientism. How do we avoid falling into the trap of scientism when we do our research?
Right. That is a very good question. And, people think when I say scientism, I'm just making fun of the scientific method, where I'm just like dismissing it. When I'm not, I actually love the scientific method. And just as a side note, the purpose of science is to disprove the current going status quo. That's the purpose of science. Okay. Now, where was I?
Scientism.
Scientism. Okay. So, sorry, I'm kind of excited here. I never get to talk about this with anybody.
Oh, well, I'm glad you can, yeah.
Okay, so scientism, I love the scientific method, okay? That's what we got to do. We got to observe, we got to test, We got to categorize. Okay. Scientism is different from science because scientism is the establishment of science. Okay. This is the E equals MC squared, which is actually a flawed, this isn't, if C equals MC squared is very short, but it could be shorter,
It could be just like
beautiful,
E.
Yeah, beautiful equations have to be short.
Mm-hmm.
And you look into that and you realize that after Einstein met Edwin Hubble, he cut that equation in half. So we don't even have the full E equals MC squared equation. That equation actually went further, but after he met Edwin Hubble, which is very suspicious, he cut half of that. So we don't even have that, We don't even have the full E equals MC squared. So we're just playing with a fraction, just like pi is kind of a dead end in mathematics. We work under the numerical system, which is a base 10 system. Now, who's to say in another system, a base 6 system, say, equations and numbers will maybe look more elegant. Maybe pi will be actually a whole number, The base 10 system, I think, is another one of these traps that they've trapped us in.
So that would be incredible to achieve if we could make pi a whole number.
Right? See, you're following where I'm headed here. So scientism, you just got to get away from people, building on each other's. It's gotten so bad now that 90%, they say 90% of the known universe is you can't see it because it's black matter or whatever, dark matter. That's how bad scientism is now, where they claim that something is just surrounding you, but it's not detectable. Just like how the Big Bang came out of nothing, everything appeared from nothing. If I told you, if I went to the store, and came back with a new car, and you said, hey, where'd you get that car? I said, it came out of nowhere. I was just walking down the street. How does everyone believe this? It starts to, I hope you can see where I'm going with this.
So I would feel we would be remiss if we didn't give you the opportunity to address some of the basic questions people would have about the bald Earth versus the flat Earth hypotheses, because a lot of people, have never considered the flat Earth before, and
right.
They might say well, if the Earth is flat, then explain mountains to me. How can there be mountains if the Earth is flat?
Right. And I always say, as a joke, I say I'm a lumpy earther.
Yeah.
But if we can, just really quick, let's just, because it's really hard to imagine this stuff, let's really quick do some mental, exercises, okay? Picture yourself in a room, a regular room, say it's 10 by 10, 8 feet tall.
Okay.
Okay. And now push back the walls 1,000 miles in every direction. Okay, so that's way beyond you can see. Mm-hmm. But the ceiling is still, 8 feet tall.
Okay.
So what you're going to see is this. What you're going to see, the ceiling droop down to the center, to the vanishing point. Anyone who knows about drawing knows about the vanishing point. And your ground is going to look like it raises up to the middle, to the vanishing point, right? Now picture you're an ant on a basketball.
Uh-huh.
You're crawling around on the surface of the basketball. And say that you get in a plane, a really small ant plane, okay? And you're taking off on the basketball. And you're rising up off the basketball. What is don't answer now, but what are you seeing? What is the horizon doing out of your window as an ant taking off on the basketball? Now, we need to think of these things because this is what science is telling us. Science is telling us that as we raise up off the ball, we should see that horizon dropping, okay? As you're going away from the ball, as you come up, right, you're gonna have to look down to see that horizon. But that's not what we see, weirdly enough. When we get in a plane and we take off, when we look out the window, the horizon is at eye level. We don't have to look down at all. So one of the things that I test people on is, if someone asks me about this and wants to talk with me about it, the first question I ask is, have you ever seen the curvature of the earth with your own eyes? Okay. Now, right off the bat, they'll say, yeah, I was on an airplane, and that's before I tell them that modern science says that you can't even see a curve at 120,000 feet up, which is 3 times as high as any commercial flight. So anyone who's said that they've seen a curvature from an airplane is either remembering it wrong, or I don't want to say they're hiding anything, but
could depend on
that's
the person.
That's how you feel them out, But if they say, yeah, I've seen a curvature from an airplane, then it's really a downhill battle, because they're going to defend that memory, whether they have it or not. They're going to defend it, so there's nothing I can do at that point. But when they realize, they haven't seen it with their own eyes, there's a little leeway there. And all I ask is time to plant the seed in your head, and then you can just be mad at me all you want for going against thousands of years of science, And I get a lot of pushback, it's a big part of being a flat earther. You really, you put yourself in a position where you really need to know your stuff. You really need to be able to explain your reasons why. So that's where I am now, and I'm just dying to get the information out.
Well, yeah, you seem very passionate about the Earth being flat, and you seem very excited about it.
Well, I really want to bring people to that realization, because I think that if you ponder for a moment that the Big Bang is never happened, that we are not a sphere. Okay, this means that we are not a mistake. We are not just an accident. We're not just lucky flying on a spinning speck of dust through space. We're not in the Goldilocks zone. We didn't just happen to crawl out of the ocean to evolve into a monkey, to evolve into a human, just after millions and millions of years that we can't demonstrate, we can't replicate. When you realize that might be a lie, then it's very exciting to realize that, okay, the truth could be that you do have a purpose. This wasn't an accident, and you have real worth. Your life already is worth something. You don't have to make it worth something. You already are. So it's very, it's kind of empowering, because you start to think that you're not an accident, that you have purpose, that it's of my belief, my personal belief, that we actually opted into this thing, and we actually came here, because you don't arrive somewhere on accident. You think of the place you want to go, and then you go there. You think that you want a sandwich, and then you go make a sandwich. We just appeared here, where I believe that we may have made plans to come here.
Interesting. That's something I hadn't considered.
So what do all of these scientific so-called authorities have to gain from lying to us about the nature of the Earth?
Well, that's something I've thought a lot about, and it's really hard to put into words, because I didn't find this out by just hearing that it's flat. I just started seeing problems. It's hard to explain it when you're not the one seeing the problems. But I think, number one, what they have to gain is they know they're absolutely sure that you know nothing about where you live. Okay, I think you have to think on a grand scale, and I think there definitely is something to gain by a higher authority. If you think that you are trapped on a sphere, it kind of looks like a prison. If it's indeed a flat plane, a perfect way to create a prison is to collapse it in on itself. That way everyone thinks they're in a prison, but they don't mind. Man is different than a tiger. The tiger comes to the gate and he just turns back. If a man ever came to a gate, he would have to climb it or else die. He would always have to climb that. So there cannot be a gate. The only gate that exist is in your mind, and that's because you've been worshiping an icon, the sphere, your whole life, and you don't even realize it. You turn on the TV, and the Universal Studios logo comes up, and it's that swooping thing around the globe, and you pay no mind to it. It's what you learned while you were in kindergarten.
Interesting.
So if it's not a globe and it is a plane, then if you got into an airplane and you flew far enough, would you just keep going forever? Are there continents that we don't even know about yet?
Some say there is a lot of land out there. New Schwabenland was a partially mythical city that people say Hitler was building in Antarctica. New Schwabenland. I don't know if you guys have ever come across that.
No.
But yeah, that's cool to look into, New Schwabenland. And the Nazis had a very far reach. A lot of Hollywood movies give it up these days. A lot of Nazis in cold weather, they're all talking about it. Like, the Nazis had the biggest war machine in history, and they were the ones on the outside, like, looking for answers. Of course, it was a horrible death war machine, but they had the money to pursue these weird avenues, So people say, yeah, there's more continents out there. People say that Antarctica is actually not a continent, but the crust on the outside of the pizza, because, if you think about it, if you sail to Antarctica, you sail back, how are you to know that it's a continent or a ring around you,
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, one thing that's just, I can't help asking is that a lot of people, I think, in the past used to be aware of the flatness of the Earth centuries ago, and I think that was really set back by the stories of people who said they sailed around the Earth.
Right, exactly.
So,
and who does anyone come to mind when you say sail around the Earth to prove it's a globe?
Well, Magellan is the first name that comes to mind.
Right. And picture a globe that you've stepped on, and the North Pole has remained in the center, and the Antarctica is the crust on the outside. You can, traverse around that puddle, just like you can traverse around that globe,
So he sailed maybe around the edge of the Earth.
Yeah, possibly. He was probably going through, he's going through the continents just like his globe route says. It's just on a flat model where the North Pole is at the actual center, which is the magnetic center.
And
so if this is like a pizza, could you get into an airplane and then fly over the edge and then back to the other side? What's on the other side?
You mean on the flip, like the bottom of it?
Yeah. What is on the other side of the Earth?
Well, I hesitate to make any conclusions about things that I haven't seen or that I would never be able to see. I have a feeling that it's an endless plane. We just have the ground and we have the sky. I think the globe model puts us already in space. And flying through darkness. Where when we say a flat Earth now, you automatically assume like a spinning CD. Going through space, and everyone does, I did too. I was picturing a crusty bottom, but what I see with my eyes is I see a stationary flat Earth that never moves. When I'm sitting down in a seat, I bet you guys are sitting down right now.
Yeah.
You feel perfectly still and have never felt anything. When we are actually speeding up and slowing down all the time in our our elongated orbit around the sun, we actually should be, it's my theory that we should be feeling that speeding up and slowing down through summer to winter,
So
but we don't.
The Earth is sort of like the floor of the universe.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think of it now. There's people who say that, everything looked like Antarctica, and the sun, kind of melted out a circle around the North Pole, and we're kind of just in a melted out puddle in a vast ice sheet. And people think there's other puddles, and they think that's where aliens come from. Because, if the globe model is wrong, what's more believable? An alien going 1,000 light years to get here, or an alien just traversing like the frosty, crust to get to our puddle,
So could we in theory mount an expedition to Antarctica, and then find the wall? That would be proof, right?
Now, in the past, there has been something called the Antarctic Treaty. Now, this still stands, but I don't think it applies to civilians anymore. But the Antarctic Treaty was basically was the longest standing treaty in history, where every world superpower has to guard Antarctica for, it's everybody's, but everybody has to guard it. Right now, we've really been asking questions about explorations, and I don't think the Antarctic Treaty is going to be a problem for anyone, but for a long time, the Antarctic Treaty was really weighing on our brains. But in theory, I think you can. If you get enough people, you'd have to make it very, very public so nothing shady would happen to you by, special interest people. You would have to have a very wide-reaching fan base,
Okay.
But it's never been. I want to. There's a man called Matt Powerland, and he's a defector from NASA. His story is that he was at a NASA party one time, and they were laughing at him because he still thought the Earth was a globe, and he wants to traverse the ice. But I think we should be looking at the North Pole more, because if the flat Earth model is right, the North Pole would basically be the center of everything. So I have a hunch that at the center of everything, you're going to find something cool. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very fascinating, and we're almost out of time. But before we cease, I think we should tell people, if this has made them curious, where they could find more information.
Right. This is the Flat Earth revival has basically been a YouTube revival. You just go on YouTube and type in the Flat Earth and Flat Earth proofs. There's a lot of proofs out there. People making videos. Rob Skiba just came out with a video recently proving that the Chicago skyline is actually not a mirage, which is what they tell us, because the Chicago skyline should be farther over the curve from the Michigan shoreline, and we shouldn't be able to see the Chicago skyline. But they explain it away. They say that it's a mirage. Rob Skiba this year got in a boat and went from Michigan to the Chicago skyline and had the camera on the whole time, and the mirage didn't waver. So he disproved that was a mirage. So we are seeing things way further than we can see them, than we should be able to see them. This year we've done a lot. Obama has mentioned Flat Earth on a handful of occasions in speeches this year. Just go onto YouTube, type in Flat Earth, and it's everyone's personal journey. I don't want to shout too many people out, because you need to do it yourself. That's the only way you're going to, get into this, if you check it yourself.
All right. And if it's something mentioned by Obama, it's certainly that lends it a level of credibility.
Right.
So,
really,
and once
really
again,
quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really quick. These are just some terms just to throw out for everyone. Quantum locking is where you use magnets to lock things and make things levitate and defy defies electromagnetism. Sonoluminescence. Okay, type in sonoluminescence. It's where you get a jar and you actually make a pinpoint of air, a little bubble, glow with light if you shout, if you stream audio waves into it. But if anyone wants to know more, check out my YouTube channel, Caveman444, and watch from the beginning and see my progression through Flat Earth, because I didn't like it at first. I wanted to get in here and disprove it and be the one to debunk it, but here I am, a couple of years later, and I'm still looking for proof of the globe. So just prove the globe yourself. That's what I tell everyone. Just in your own way, prove it yourself.
All right. Well, we invite everyone to do their own research. So, once again, you can find that at Caveman444 on YouTube. This is the Most Important People in the World podcast. I'm Charles Berman.
I'm Jonathan Berman.
We've been talking to Tony, AKA Caveman444. You can find this podcast at mostimportantpeopleinThe.world. If you have suggestions, questions, comments, vitriol, insults, send them to @mostimportantpeopleinThe.world. And as always, we ask people to visualize sending us money.
Oh, yes, I forgot we do that. Please visualize sending us money.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good night, and stay tuned to whatever medium you use to listen to this podcast for the next episode of The Most Important People in the World. This has been The Most Important People in the World with Charles Berman and Jonathan Berman. With questions or comments, email @mostimportantpeopleinThe.world.